Welcome to this week's Club3D challenge. Last week we were making a Star Wars X-Wing, and this week Edwin suggested that we make a Star Wars Star Destroyer. So the end result is hopefully going to be a little textured, fairly simple model that you can then animate or extend or add more detail to. So we're going to use a reference image. I've searched on Google Images for this one. We're going to use that to help us with the modelling and also for some of the simple textures. Okay, so if we Control N, start from the default cube, press X to delete it, and Shift and A, we're going to add in an empty, which is going to be our reference image. So you'll have to search online for a picture of a Star Destroyer and then save it. And if you click on the little empty tab and then open and then find where you've saved that image, I've just saved mine as Star Destroyer. I'm going to rotate it around so it's facing the camera, so that's RX90 and RZ90. I'm going to scale it up, after RX90 I press enter and then RZ90 and enter, and it just rotates it around both of those axes. I'll press S, scale it up a little bit, and then G and move it to the side. Okay, we're ready to go. So Shift and A will add a plane, and I want to turn this rectangle into a triangle. So I'm going to rotate it around the Z axis by 45 degrees, so 45, enter. So Z, 45, enter. And I want to get rid of this vertex, so let's go into edit mode by pressing tab, right click on this one, X to delete. And then if I right click and shift right click on all the other vertices, when you press F, it will add the edges and faces until we've got a triangle. So the reason we're doing this is so that we can mirror it so it looks identical both sides of the X axes. So we'll set up that mirror, we'll go onto the modifiers tab and add a mirror modifier. I want it to be mirrored about in the Y direction, but it doesn't look quite right at the moment, and that's because we rotated it by 45 degrees. So we go back into object mode by pressing tab and press Control A to apply that rotation. Now the mirror works much better. Okay, so back into edit mode. I'm going to move this back vertex forward, so right click to select G, X, and just move it forwards a little bit. Let's make this one move this forwards as well, so GX, just to make it a bit bigger. And there we go, that's our basic shape. If we go into face mode by pressing Control Tab to bring up this little window and face, right click on the triangle on the right and then E to extrude, and let's pull it up a little bit. Okay, so on the reference image it looks a little bit like it goes in on the sides, so I'm not going to do too much detail on this. I'm just going to add a loop cut, that's Control and R, put my mouse above the front of the Star Destroyer and then click again, and then G and then X just to move that back a little bit, and it gives the impression that it kind of goes in. Alright, so the Star Destroyer kind of slopes at the top, so to give that impression we're going to go into vertex mode, so it's Control Tab, vertex, right click at the back at the top, and then GZ just to move it up a little bit. So that's just about right. Okay, so next we want to add the boxes at the back, and we'll use the knife tool for this. So if you change your view so you're looking top down, when you press K you can click and keep on clicking and then click along the back at the top, and I'll press enter and it'll turn where I clicked into edges and faces. Now I can press E to extrude up, but notice how it goes sort of normal to the face, which means that there's a gap between these two blocks. To fix that, before you click, press Z once and Z again, and then it'll only move up in the Z direction rather than perpendicular to or normal to the face that we had before. Okay, there we go. And we'll do the same. So we've done this bit, we'll do the bit on top, again using the knife tool, that's K, and then click, 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 enter. And then we need to go back into face mode, right click, E to extrude, Z twice, there we go. And for the bit at the back, underneath the kind of tail bit, I'm just going to draw a triangle. So K, and then draw a line off to the side, enter, so we've got a triangle here. E to extrude, Z twice, there we go. Okay, so in the reference image, it looks like there's loads more detail. You can play around adding as much detail as you like. I'll just do a couple to give the idea. So K for the knife tool, click where you want the edges to go, right click and extrude. And this time I'm going to press X to just force it to go in the X direction, and one on the side, K, click, click, click enter, right click, there we go. So for the top bit, I'm going to add a cube for this, so Shift and A, add a cube, scale it down with S, G, Z to move it up, scale it down a little bit. For this, I find it helpful to use quad view to position it. So that's Control, Alt and Q. So that means you can look from 4 different directions. And it's just really helpful for pressing G to grab it and move it into exactly the right sort of place. So I want, let's go out of quad view again, Control, Alt and Q. Control Tab. If we select this face on the side, this one should be smaller. So S to scale it down, maybe G, Y to move it out a little bit. If your faces in the middle aren't exactly on the X-axis, then it looks a bit weird in the middle. So this is why it's worth having the quad view. I'm going to press Control and L to select all the linked faces, and then just move it so that it's as close to that red X-axis as possible. Control Alt Q. There we go. So it looks like it's a bit too far up. So G, Z, move it down a little bit. And that will do. I'm just going to add a little bit at the top and then one of these blobs. So I'm going to use the knife tool for this. K, click, 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 and then I need to press enter to apply it. Right click E, oops, Control Z, E, Z, Z. There we go. And then I'm going to left click where I want the blob to be. It must be like a radar thing, I'm not entirely sure what it is. Shift and A and we'll add an icosphere. S to scale down, and again I'm going to use the quad view just to position it. So Control Alt Q and then G until it's where you want it. There we go. So it looks to me like this top bit is far too big. So I'm going to shift and right click and then press Control and L and just scale all of this down a little bit, and then G and X, oops, Y until it's perfectly centered. There we go. Oh, and it's not quite connected, so G and Z to move it down. There we go. Okay, so now to add the textures. For this, first of all we need to go into Cycles render mode, and then we're going to add a new material. So that's the one that looks a bit like a radioactive symbol. We'll add a new material. And next to the colour on the little blob, if you click and choose image texture, we've already opened the image that we want to use. So if we click on the little image icon and choose Star Destroyer, you won't see it until you do two things. First of all, we need to change it so we're in material mode. And secondly, we need to unwrap this 3D object onto this 2D image. And the easiest way to do this is in the UV editing view. So again, we'll make it so that we're in material view. We'll see the Star Destroyer image by clicking on the image icon here. Okay, so press A until you've got all of your vertices selected, and try and change your view until it's the same sort of orientation as the image that you've got here. So something like that. There we go, that'll do. So when it's about right, press U and choose Project from View down at the bottom, and that will get all of the vertices as they currently are and unwrap them onto this image. So if you press G now, you can move them, and you can see how the texture moves on your object. You can press S to scale. So I'm going to try and line up the middle section just here. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't all work out particularly well, because you can always tweak it and change it and move it afterwards. I don't think I've got the angle quite right, so I'm going to unwrap it again. So U, project from view. There we go, that's better. Scale it with S. Try and make it the right sort of size. Yeah, there we go. And then you can just select any vertex that you want to move, or I use B for box select and drag, and then G to grab them. And then, so let's press B to box select these, grab them over there. And that's reasonable. It's going to take quite a lot of playing around until it all maps out nicely. So there's a point wrong over here. Let's kind of map that over there. So I'm just right clicking and pressing G to grab. The bit that looks the worst for me is the edges, the sides over here. So if I view those and just select those two edges, so shift right click until I've got both of them selected, I'm going to unwrap those separately. So you can see at the moment these two faces are over this part of the image. I'd like them to be over this part of the image. So I'm just going to press U and this time just unwrap normally. R to rotate, S to scale, G to grab, and R again, until we've got it on the part of the image. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, you just have to kind of tweak it and change it until it looks roughly what you want it to. So I'm going to play around with it for a little bit, but I'm not going to spend ages because obviously yours will be different and you don't want to spend ages watching me doing this. Okay, so that's the rough idea of how to apply your texture. Any bit with black blobs on, which are pretty inevitable to get, just means that the Blender's crashed on me. It normally takes about 10 seconds when it does this. Any bits that are black just mean that you need to move the vertices over the right part of the image. So the final stage that we're going to try and do, here we go. So you can see this black bit here is probably what's causing this black bit there. So right click and adjust it. That's loads better. Okay, so I'll go back into the default view. We'll put on a background image, and it's worth searching for a really high quality, large background image. There's loads of really impressive space backgrounds that you can use. So I'll go into object mode. I'll right click and delete this this reference image. For me, Blender seems to crash when I go back into object mode. It will come back round eventually. It's probably because I'm using quite a large texture image. So sorry about the delay. I'll come back round in a second. There we go. I'm just going to hide this reference image by pressing H. Okay, so for the background, I'm going to click on the World tab and then Use Nodes. The little blob next to colour, if we click on that one and go for environment texture, press open, and I've searched for a space image. It's a pretty high resolution one, it's about 4 megabytes, so try and choose a nice large high resolution one. So now hopefully when you go into rendered mode you should be able to see that space background. So have a play around, turn it into an animation, add some other objects in, add some other lighting effects in.